Now we're going to go over the menus and all the picture settings that the Samsung QN90C offers you this year, 2023. So we have multi-view, we have speakers, you can toggle between that. It's all the same dashboard as last year, basically. Bluetooth, picture setup, Wi-Fi, which is currently disconnected. We have our picture mode, or rather our sound mode, which is set to standard. You can also go to amplify. Intelligent mode, which is turned off, game mode, which is off, captions, and you basically get the idea. It's the same exact bar for all intents and purposes across the center hub there that you use to access core settings. You have your buttons here, and then from there you have your information and stuff like that. But again, the UI has not changed from last year. This is literally the exact same thing. It's just a different model, which for me, I do think maybe I would like to see it refreshed a bit, but that's maybe just a personal preference and maybe not a real gripe for some people, especially those who don't have this TV already, or maybe last year's model or something like that, and don't review TVs enough to see these things. You know what I mean? So we're going to open up our settings, and we're going to start with the picture menu settings, because these are always the most exciting things to go through. So the picture preset modes are Dynamic, Standard, Eco, Movie, Filmmaker mode. Now you can unlock additional settings, or rather additional modes. I'll show you how to do that in a later video. But more or less this is what we have. And then we have our picture settings as far as our size settings to fit to screen. We have picture size, we have the zoom in the position, and then under the expert settings we have our brightness, contrast, sharpness, color, tint. We can apply to all settings or current sources. We have our picture clarity option where we have the option to go to auto or custom or off. Then we have the ability to max it out or not. Now, me personally, I love judder reduction because that's where things start getting really smooth. So I just go ahead and max that out for a preferential type of look. As far as LED clear motion, this is the black frame insertion technology. Usually on Samsung TVs, there are a ton of flicker artifacts on it or around anything moving. It's kind of jarring and dizzying. I'll see if they fix that this year. And no, it still does that pulsating thing, so I just disable it because that's very dizzying. Noise reduction feature this year is unfortunately just off or auto. Would have liked to see low come back, but say la vie there. Local dimming, we're going to have standard, high, and low. Now, oddly enough, the behavior is high local dimming, which is supposed to be your best local dimming you could possibly get, doesn't actually dim down the television properly. And standard is kind of like a middle of the way, and low seems to give the most aggressive local dimming that the TV offers. It's the weirdest thing I've ever seen, where Samsung, I don't know if it's maybe a naming system thing, like maybe high means something else to them and low means something else to them, but it's opposite day for them. And so it seems like, I'll have to test this, but it seems like to get the best black level performance, you actually should turn your local dimming to low. Now, this has been the case on older Samsung TVs as well, like my Samsung Q8FN. It's a weird little Samsung Easter egg, if we will, that keeps coming back year after year. Now, in terms of the contrast enhancer, this year you have low and high. There is no medium. So, if you wanted a middle of the way, that's unfortunately not there. We have tone mapping capabilities for HDR, which, we don't have HDR on right now, but you do have tone mapping this year. The film mode, same thing. This is for broadcast type TVs and things like that. Color tone is basically warm 2, warm 1, standard, and cool. I have it set to warm 2 because I'm in movie mode, which basically that defaults to. Your white balance options are all the same. Nothing really changed there. You still have a 20 point. And then when we go into our gamma, we have BT1886 and 2.2. Also, it's important to note that ST2084 and HLG, these are HDR gamma points. So if you are noticing that maybe some settings or some features are just unavailable, you might want to check your gamma to make sure you're not in HDR, because 9 times out of 10, that usually is the reason why some things get grayed out sometimes. But again, we'll investigate some of that stuff later on. Now, BT1886, again, that's the gamma slider adjustment. So outside of setting the actual gamma that you want to target, like, for example, BT1886 or 2.2, you then have the slider, of course, as we're familiar with, up and down, shadow detail. We have color settings, which basically the color space settings. Auto is what Samsung likes to call it. They don't give it like Rec 709 or DCI-P3 or any of the technical names. They keep it consumer friendly. So native, usually is what most people would want to set it to see the more vibrant picture, but auto if you like a more muted color paletry. And then custom, of course, if you want to do custom calibration work. And then from there, you have access to a couple of different things. Now, unfortunately, color gamut is still locked, and there's no current way to unlock this, giving you access to, say, BT 2020 or DCI-P3 off the bat. So that is still unfortunate. Additionally, unlike LG and some of the other manufacturers like Sony and so on, you don't have a hue, saturation, and luminance way of adjusting individual colors. You have to play with an RGB mixer to hope that colors balance out. This takes substantially more time, so the calibration process, if you hire a technician over, could take you a while longer than most other brands if they don't implement some form of auto cal, which yes, that can take care of it, but again, it's an inconvenience. Now, they brought back their smart calibration feature this year. We're going to have to see if that holds its weight in gold or if it does anything of any value. We can see. But the idea is that you don't need to hire anybody. You just kind of use your Samsung phone, of course. Nice little plug they give themselves. And then, of course, you're able to calibrate your TV. So last year it didn't work. It was a paperweight feature, and we'll see if that's the case this year, but who knows. And of course, we have reset picture options. We have our sound options where we can select our various TV speakers, whether we want it through a receiver or optical, or we want Bluetooth speakers. Sound mode is basically very bare bones. It used to be back in the day we had a bunch of things like theater and all kinds of things, fun stuff. Well, now it's just standard and amplify. They do have game mode sound, but it's not really all that great either. Under expert settings, we have balance. We have all the same features that you've seen before on TVs. It comes back. This truly is the Samsung user interface that they've been pushing out since 2016. Not a whole lot has changed. You go into input signal plus, you have basically all the same things where you can select these and it basically give you deeper, richer expression of color for 4K content, or turn it off if you're using something maybe older, 8-bit type stuff. Then black level, you can adjust that to give you the proper black level for the content that you're watching, at least as far as the HDMI black level. Device manager, you can see your device list. It really, truly is the same exact thing that we have been seeing. Broadcast settings, audio settings for that, all that is all right here conveniently for you. What I like to do is go under accessibility though, and I like to go down to a couple of different things. Now, the first thing you can do if you want, you can turn picture off here. As you see, the option does exist. Usually these features are relegated to only OLED models, but you do have the option to turn it off here. So that's nice that that's carrying over to LED in case you want to listen to music and clean the house or something like that. Or maybe you just want to kill the TV and listen to ambient sounds on YouTube playing back. You can do that, and maybe you don't want your phone hooked up or draining battery. You can use your TV to stream it or whatever and kill the picture. So it's a useful thing for sure for some people there. And yeah, so again, what I like to do is I like to go down and I go to high contrast, and that basically will kill the menu and make it black. And that really gives a nice look, in my personal view, to where it changes things and gives you a little bit more to play around with. So you have that option if you want it. And then, of course, you have intelligent mode. Intelligent mode really just makes everything very blue. As you see, the screen just got much bluer. That's not really for me. It's just not coherent with what they say it's going to be, and I found eye comfort mode to be exactly the same way. So I think that's best to kind of leave it off. In terms of, again, going over the features, power saving, again, you have your brightness optimization, which this year was automatically unchecked, which was nice. We do have our screensaver on by default. We can uncheck that, but more or less everything was already off, which is, in my view, a television and Samsung first. Usually all this stuff is on and you have to disable it, where this year I didn't have to do that, which is very nice. And then, of course, you have your start screen options to choose. If you wanted to start with the smart hub from Samsung, you can disable that if it's annoying. Turn on or auto run screen mirroring, multicast. You can disable all the things that you don't use. Hit reset if you found that maybe you made a mistake and you can't find a setting you want to reset. Under the support options, I'm on firmware 1100. So I don't know if that helps, but the review right now is going to be based on firmware 1100. They have device care stuff. If you have any issues and you need to maybe troubleshoot an HDMI cable or something like that, that's always a good place. But again, I know I'm saying this a lot, but it truly is the menu we had have had from Samsung for the longest time, and the options aren't very different. So if you like Tizen, this is good news because it's more of the same and there's not really a whole lot to learn. There's not a learning curve of any kind. It's like jump right back in where you left off if you were just upgrading from maybe an older Samsung. And newcomers could appreciate the simplicity of how it works. I do find it to be a little sticky here as I'm clicking. You see it takes a little bit, like a second here and there to load some things. And as I try to go through the menu, it's not exactly totally responsive. It is a little laggy there. So if that kind of thing bothers you, I think that's something that you're going to want to weigh up, again, depending on how often you go through the options. But again, all that being said, we're going to go through and do a deep dive on some other features, so definitely keep it locked for that. And thank you guys so much for watching the #1 brand in honesty. Until the next video, I'll see you guys later.